Hi to all. Today we are talking with Will Marsh, the man of all men at Premier Research Laboratories, a good friend, and a man with just tons of knowledge. So, Will, if you could introduce yourself with a little bit of touch of background and also why you decided to go with Premier Research.
Well, thank you, Peter, and thank you, everybody tuning in. It's an honor to be here and to share my insights and my journey with you all. My background to Premier Research Labs, I'm the wholesale lead executive for domestic and international sales at Premier Research Labs. I've been with the company for over 4 years now, and it's been a distinct honor and a pleasure to serve practitioners like Peter all around the world with Premier Research Labs products. And I think my journey, it's a personal journey, as most people do with health and nutrition. It started when I was very young. It started with a struggle to really comprehend nutrition and its benefits and how food can really nourish the body. And so, as privy and personal as it might sound, I did suffer from a little bit of an eating disorder when I was younger. And that journey alone, as anybody knows, it's a very personal and it's a struggling facet to one's life, and it really kind of rips the fabric of your understanding of the world in a lot of different ways, because food and nutrition is so central to opening up the key to health and wellness and just longevity and a prosperous life. And so my journey, luckily, I was able to realize that at a very young age that what I was doing to my body wasn't going to be sustainable. I needed that nourishment, and so I found a passion actually in nutrition, and that passion led me to go to the University of Texas here in Austin, Texas, where Premier Research Labs is located. And I studied nutritional sciences there for 4 years, actually did oncology research there at the University of Texas. So I love the science. I love the food science applications. I love the biochemistry of nutrition. I think that's where the juice, the rubber meets the road, and that's where the juicy stuff is. And so that was always my passion. It was the scientific, analytical understanding of when you eat this certain nutrient, what does that do? What kind of biological effects does that elicit in the body? And so that passion just led to this culmination of this understanding of nutrition and where it can take the body, and how I love to share that information and educate that information to practitioners. Because if you look at traditional medicine, and if you look at, just the general populace, a lot of people don't understand the food they eat. And so while I was in school, of course, doing these research modalities, I actually was a manager at General Nutrition Center, GNC, as most of you know. I know, right? And so that experience, and I was there for a very long time, and I myself am a health advocate. I love working out. That's my passion in fitness and health and wellness, as with food. I mean, most nutritionists are. And so, everything on that shelf that I was selling at GNC, there was always stuff, even with my background, I had to Google. I had to go look up. I didn't understand what this was. And I realized how much junk was in those products. And so you just have this awareness that what you're selling is probably not the best if there's so much filler to the product. Yes, it does have some sort of benefit to that, but at what cost? What's the question? And so luckily—
So let me just quickly interrupt and just say, for those who are listening, Will is my guy. I know what the product does, but he can tell me the whys and the biochemistry, which is just amazing. And in adjunct here, we were going to sort of break this up into multiple videos, but I realized that we're already jumping ahead. So we're just going to go with the flow here. And so why are you with Premier? I'll ask that right out front, and then we'll go into that aspect of DNA testing.
Yeah, so it goes back to kind of my journey, and I was blessed and fortunate enough to come across Premier. I mean, I realized that I couldn't stay at GNC forever, and that wouldn't be the culmination of my career and my path to knowledge and growth. And so as one does, one looks to what the world offers, and Premier was at my doorstep, and that was a blessing in disguise that I didn't even realize. And so I dove headfirst into the company, actually applied for a job that I was not qualified for. Even the hiring individuals there were like, look, this is a job for people 10 years older than you and at least 6 to 7 years more experience. And I was like, I don't care. This is what I want to do. And so my journey, why Premier and why I said yes, was once I realized that they asked me this question, and this question resonates with me because so many people underestimate nutrition. And they ask, well, do you think nutrition is a dead industry? Do you think that is a dead end? I mean, there's this understanding in the pharmaceutical world that it is, our understanding of nutrition is limited to micronutrients, and that's it. The therapeutic aspect is not, the modality is not there to where you can really support and modulate a patient's outcome. When I got that question, my eyes lit up and I was like, no, do you realize how many different biochemical derivatives are in the world that can impact an individual's health, and all the phytonutrients that are in food that can modulate different biochemical aspects? That is a paramount realization that everybody should have. And if you're not having that mentality of how the food you eat can nourish your body and change the outcomes of different disease states, even potentially,
yeah,
you're turning a blind eye to part of the world. And that led me to say yes, right? Because I realized that this company was on the forefront of nutraceutical endeavors and research and product development, and that we were going to keep growing and growing, and we weren't going to stop. And I think the paramount to that is because of the quality, and that's where it all came to. So that's the why. And then going into the testing and why we test and why we do analytical capacities in terms of DNA, our phyto, when you're looking at spectroscopy, or you're looking at even just objective microscopy, you have to go to that due diligence, because just like you and I, if we're going to a restaurant and we order broccoli, we recognize broccoli. With the nutraceutical world, just like with GNC or any company, you don't know what's in the product. You have to trust the labeling, and you have to trust the quality to the manufacturer, that labeling is accurate. And so if a company does not put their stamp and put their self out there that they are doing that quality that is needed for a product, you shouldn't even be dealing with them in the first place. And that goes back to a why too, because when I was part of this interview process, that was the MO. They led with this MO. This is who Premier Research Labs is. This is what we're about. And then they wanted to know, well, where do I think nutrition lies in the world? And I was like, well, everything you're doing fits with my MO and the passion that I have with nutrition goes. So it made sense. It was like peanut butter and jelly, although don't eat too many peanut butter jellies.
Yeah, no, bad for the gallbladder, right?
We don't need
that really answers the question, really, of all the truths and half-truths and untruths that are being labeled out there these days of what a product can do and what's in it. And that's why I stick with you guys, is because when I purchase from you for my clients, I really know what they're getting, which is, what is it, FDA, USDA approved?
So yeah, Premier Research Labs is a FDA inspected facility, and we are a USP certified manufacturer. And so those are a little bit bigger terminologies or abbreviations, I guess. And yes. USP stands for United States Pharmacopoeia. And so it's a third party, basically CGMP audit that we have gone through. And so CGMP stands for Good Manufacturing Processes. And with CGMP, you want to make sure any company, whether it's a food manufacturer, whether it's a dietary supplement manufacturer, even if it's a water bottle manufacturer, you want to make sure there's always good manufacturing practices to each one of those industries. And so we have taken the decision and the difficult path of actually going to a pharmacopoeia level of certification to our manufacturing facilities. And we stand by that, so much so that we are one of the few companies in the world, I think it's one of 8 at this time, that had that USP certification. And so that is going above CGMP that the FDA requires for supplement manufacturing.
Definitely.
And actually going to pharmacopoeia standards. So that's why we identify ourselves as a nutraceutical manufacturer. because the nutrition that we're doing is the caliber of a pharmaceutical company, the processes to our manufacturing.
And yet, you guys are maintaining that whole food cell vibrancy, correct?
That is correct. And so a lot of these USP certified manufacturers, if you look at a pharmaceutical drug, there's one derivative usually in a pharmaceutical drug that actually is biologically active and actually has the therapeutic effect. Now, there could be some sort of other chemical modalities that help to increase the effectiveness of that one derivative, but usually you're looking at just one thing. And so with supplements, a lot of companies take that same MO. They say, we're going to extract a derivative, we're going to remove that from the whole food, and we're just going to give you this one derivative to modulate a whole range of complexes in the body. And so what we believe, and what I'm I advocate to anybody I talk to, is that nutrition, nutraceuticals, and the derivatives to whole foods are supposed to be with that whole food matrix, because the plant, you have to realize a plant or some sort of living organism uses that nutrient in so many other capacities, and there's different derivatives in the I guess the cell or the whole food that support the action of that one derivative. And so the whole food matrix is so important to unlocking the biological activity of the one derivative or the one extract that you're looking to be piercing with or therapeutic with. And so if you remove that, you take that out and say, I'm going to have this reductionist mentality and I'm going to remove that so I can be piercing with that one nutrient. Well, you actually start to lose some of the biological value, because it's not going to be as piercing, because you don't have everything there that was boosting its activity in the first place. And so it's saying, hey, I'm not going to compromise. I'm going to have this whole food matrix, this phyto, essence, biologically active blend component. And I'm not going to fill it with artificial excipients or fillers that, a lot of USP or beyond CGMP manufacturers do. They fill it with these products that are, they're CGMP compliant, they're pharmaceutical compliant, but they don't provide any value, or at worst, they possibly could have an impact on your health. And so,
and can we switch in then at that little bit about why synthetic does not really serve the human body?
Yeah, so synthetic, a chemist, I could, in my apartment here, I could set up a lab and I could start isolating different derivatives. And it could, for example, if you look at, I think a good example, right, is curcumin, right? A lot of people take curcumin, and curcumin is a derivative of turmeric, right? It's found naturally in turmeric. It's one of the flavonoids to turmeric. And so that curcumin, when you remove it, it has an effect in the body. It elicits a response, right? Your body might quench that inflammation. But what happens is, because it's just curcumin, there's all these other curcuminoids that go with curcumin, that when you look at turmeric and you have all those curcuminoids, the actual biological capacity to, either be as an antioxidant, I think is a great example. It's actually not as effective just as curcumin, as if curcumin is with all the other curcuminoids with turmeric. And so you're basically, let's say you have a runaway free radical pathophysiology where the body is needing satiation. It's needing, you have this runaway inflammation response, you have these reactive oxygen species in the body, and your body is just inflamed. Well, curcumin will quench that very well, but the fact is, if you have all those other curcuminoids, the curcumin can actually be more piercing to the more higher level needs. The other curcuminoids can have that biological capacity to put out other fires that maybe the curcumin is not as well suited for, right? And so that's the beauty of whole food, is that you get this spectrum. And the body is a spectrum. We are all a spectrum. We are all this resonance wavelength that goes from A to Z. We're not just A. Nobody is just an A personality. You go from A to Z, depending on the day, depending on the mood. And so food
is a lot of personalities.
Actually, it's probably more than that, but I work well with the alphabet.
So then what I would really say is that the joys of Premier is they may look at a symptom, but they're really, through their whole food processing, looking more at the why.
Hmm.
Would
Yeah,
you, could you address that?
I would agree. I mean, I think when you have the why, right, or the supplement of what you're going to be recommending, when you have a liver support need or when you have a inflammation support need, our question to a practitioner or our how we want to steer that conversation and that understanding is get an understanding of why that happens and what different systems are out of range to, because a lot of times you have a symptom, right? And a lot of doctors treat the symptom. Nutrition's not really about the symptom. We're not here to cure a disease. We're here to support the individual as a whole. And so when we look at our recommendations, it's really understanding a kind of complete picture of how we want to modulate the body so that it can address the underlying cause to why you might be having that symptom and support the body to maybe allow the body to address what's going on. And so
Say, body, wake up and remember, right?
Because when we're born, we have this innate capacity to get back up and to revitalize. And as we go through life, as we have a poor diet, as we have a poor lifestyle, as stress builds up, you start to find that these different systems fail, right? And so the why to why you're feeling, lethargic in the morning, or the why to why maybe you're not going to the bathroom like you should, or the why to why you have indigestion. Well, the why could be 30 plus years in the making. And so, yes, if there's a potential for a remedy like a pharmaceutical agent to quench that why, but is that a sustainable why? And so a whole food modality that nourishes the body, helps it remember and recognize what it needs to be doing is a sustainable option. It's not just putting a Band-Aid. And so we're not in the business of Band-Aids. We're in the business of changing lives. And with nutrition, it is about changing lives. As I've experienced with my own journey, as I'm sure you've experienced with
more than once.
It's changing that life and influencing it for the long term. And so nutrition is that it's not a silver bullet. Nutrition is not a silver bullet. In some instances it may act as one, but really it's a tidal wave. It's this building up and really moving the boat and steering the boat in a completely new, different direction. If you have one gust, it's not going to necessarily change the direction of the boat. But if you have a gale force wind that guides it in a completely different way, that is a completely different paradigm to your life, your wellness, and how you just, every day, your perspective on what you do. So that's a big parable, but that's nutrition.
It's a big parable, but it's the truth. And if our listeners can understand that, they'll understand more of how, as a practitioner, we get to look at the whole body, not only the physical and what the symptom is, but why the symptom. And it's not always about the physicality, it's about the emotional body and interference fields, which we'll talk about more with you at another time. I know you, because of your great promotion, a great one. This young member sapper is moving up in Premier, and I'm very, very proud to say so, that you got to get going. I'm looking at my clock going, oh yes, we've used your time. So with that, I will say stay tuned to all the listeners. There's more to come of the amazing Will Marsh. And here, Peter Howe at wellnesswithinreach.com saying stay tuned and thanks for listening.